Hello, welcome back to the Fanm Djanm YouTube channel. My name is Anea, the Special Events Manager here at Fanm Djanm. And with me is my friend Carrdi.
Hi.
Today we are discussing Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. And I'm so excited because, like the previous book, it is a second chance romance.
Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan is a second chance love story that follows Yasmin and Josiah, a recently divorced couple who navigate co-parenting their two children and co-ownership of their shared restaurant, Grits. After a series of situations and their deeply intertwined lives bring them back together again, we find out if time and distance is really all they needed to turn the light back on.
So I thought it would be fun if we both shared our favorite quotes from the book. Of course, in the comments, please let us know what your favorite line was or that moment that made you like stop and say, and then keep going.
So one of my favorite quotes from the book actually comes from a scene where Josiah is in therapy and he hears from his therapist about marriage and how he feels like everything is broken. And the therapist says, "Divorce may or may not be irreversible. Broken relationships may or may not be. You may never repair those completely, but you're still here to try. Do you recognize what an amazing gift that is, to still be here to try?" Loved it so much because it not only is a second chance love story, and I feel like that's the epitome of like, hey, second chance, but I think just in life we do not realize how often we get a chance to start over and try again. And so I reflected on it, I paused it, I rewound it, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely the one.
Deirdre, who owns the bookstore in town, would leave books for Yasmin instead of like bringing food. I thought that was really special because I love books. And I think that when people like curate a list or they think of you when there's like a specific book and they gift it to you, that's just, I just love that. But there was a moment where they connected because Deirdre went through 3 miscarriages before having her child. And so there was a passage about grief. Grief is a grind. It is the work of breathing and waking and rising and moving through a world that feels emptier. A gaping hole has been torn into your existence, and everyone around you just walks right past it, like it's not even there. But all you can do is stand and stare. And I was discussing this with Jackie, our visual designer here, and we both agreed that that was such a great description for grief.
Absolutely, yes.
And I don't know, it was just so beautiful, because it's so easy to like see it as one thing, but to like see it on the page and like, you know, it's a fictional story, but like there are so many moments where something or a line is so beautiful and you use in real life, and you can like see past the page and like to the author and like who's written this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just loved it.
I think that is very well said and a really very wonderful way to describe how grief can feel to somebody. So we can get started with our questions now. I'll let you lead.
So my question to you is, what captured you first while reading, and what motivated you to continue as a person who who, like you said in the last video, you don't normally read romance, but that's changing now because the past 2 books, including
romance.
This one. Yeah.
So I actually listened to the audiobook. So to be honest, what kept me going initially was the narrator, because she is incredible. She's great. Engaging. Her energy was there, and I was like, oh, I feel like I know this person. Like, I like listening to her voice. What kept me going was how she was describing her relationship with herself that morning and her getting ready to go to the restaurant, her talking about showing up to the restaurant, her conversations with her children. Something about the way that I felt like I just needed to know more of what was going on in this woman's life, because I'm very interested in what's going on in her life, kept me going. And then that first interaction between her and Josiah, like as they're older, that completely roped me in, because I was wondering who, what is her name? Vashti, yes. I was wondering who Vashti was, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't like this, and I don't know why I don't like this. So I immediately was invested in all the characters. I think that's what got me there to begin with.
After reading Before I Let Go, I accidentally read 5 more books by Kennedy Ryan.
Accidentally?
Yes, because I liked the way that she told stories, and I like that Before I Let Go felt so real. Like it felt like a friend, like connecting with me, or like just telling me a little gossip or something about their life. And it wasn't just one peak. Like it was literally a roller coaster the entire time. I like being stressed out while reading, but to a point. One thing that like roped me in was Yasmin continuing to say my husband, I mean my ex.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like I want to know more about that, because I knew that it had been 2 years since they've gotten divorced, and it's just something about that mixed with kids and just, I mean, everything in between. But yeah.
So therapy is a big topic between our main characters. As we know, they both experience a bit of a loss, and they are both experiencing grief a little bit differently. One is more reluctant to go to therapy, whereas the other is all in. Do you think that Josiah and Yasmin would have gotten together quicker, or maybe stayed together, if they had both gone to therapy from the very beginning?
I say yes, maybe. Just because I think that time, the 2 years, was also needed. I think it would have been really important for the entire family if everyone just like had their own individual therapist, but also like group therapy as well, which they ended up doing finally. I'm not going to give anything away, but we are going to talk, I mean, like spoilers, like
all throughout.
all throughout. But I thought it was interesting that Josiah never told the kids that he didn't believe in therapy, or like he didn't believe in it for himself, because it would have been completely different, just because like Yasmin did go to therapy and that did help her. And like the shock of him going to therapy because of Kasim.
Right.
And Yasmin was like, wait, so you'll, like in her head, she's like, well, you'll go for him, but not when I needed it, like when we needed it. And I think it would have been very helpful, because once again, like the quote about grief, he lost his parents young. He lost his aunt, and then their baby as well, like right after. So they were just one thing after another. And I think it would have just been really helpful if they did, but I don't know if they would have been together, because I think that time was still needed. Now, dating Vashti, I don't know about that. I don't think we needed that.
I don't either.
I was really mad about that, but that's okay. In most of the books that I've read by Kennedy Ryan, she uses like the dual perspective. And I love that, just so you aren't left wondering what the other person's thinking. But did you feel as though you were given access more to one character over the other?
Yes, I think. I do feel like, and honestly this may be by design, by the nature of their characters, we got a lot more of Yasmin than we did of Josiah, and I wonder if maybe that can feed into who they were as characters. He was more reserved and closed off about his feelings, so maybe we didn't get as much internal monologue from him. But I feel like I heard a lot more of how Yasmin felt about everything.
I felt like it was Yasmin, Josiah, Yasmin. Like,
I agree.
I felt like she got the same as you. Like, she got more chapters. But I think a part of me already like felt more for Josiah. So it was like, to me, it was like convincing the reader to like, okay, this is what's going on.
Right.
We're getting a lot of hate from Deja right now. Like, we're just trying to get all of the pieces, but we already knew that Josiah was the one that was not trusting. So we needed to see like, how can she convince him back into the relationship, I guess. So we needed her side of the story more than, I'm not gonna say more than, because I feel like I wanted it to be equal, but the way that it happened was naturally we got more of her side than his.
I can see that. So when Josiah and Yasmin are considering opening a second restaurant in Charlotte, they meet a couple who've been together for years but never married. Very happily together but never married. Do you think that kind of relationship could have worked for Josiah and Yasmin?
I feel like it could have. Okay. I was nervous that like, I always get nervous, even though I know that normally romance books, like, oh, they're going to end up at the end, like, together. But there was still a moment where I was like, are they going to end up together? Just because of, like, the trust that Josiah was trying to have in the kids and, like, trying to just understand what was going on. I think, yes, they could have had that relationship just like the couple that they met. But I felt like it meant more to them to, like, go back into the marriage, because it was like, okay, it didn't, I can't even say that it didn't work out for the first marriage. It was just that they were two different people and they needed to heal different ways, and they needed that break and then to come back.
Right.
So I don't know the right answer is what I'm trying to say. But my opinion is that for them in this book, at the end of this specific book, yes. Okay. How did you feel about the growing pain and tension between Yasmin and Deja? Because I was annoyed.
I felt like I was missing something the whole time, because Deja was so angry at her mother. It was beyond, like, teenage angst angry. She was like, she didn't like her. Yeah. And so I think I was just waiting for it to all come out the whole time. I feel like I could tell that it was, the way that it was described, it was a child that was really hurt, but I couldn't understand what it was. And I was like, she must really just be taking the divorce really hard. So once we get to that scene at the end where they're talking everything out, I listened to the audiobook, and I was cleaning when this came on, and I was so emotional, like big tears about it, because it was so sad to hear, like, how hurt she was, and how she felt like her mother just chose this, and she didn't really understand that, like, you know, we become adults, but we don't get it right all the time. So them having that conversation felt really good. Seeing it play out, it felt good. It felt like a good payoff. Finally understanding why the tensions were so high. But yes, throughout the book, I was also annoyed, because she just couldn't understand, and her mom's doing the best she can.
Okay, Yasmin and Deja. Let me tell you something. I didn't know that girl was 13, because the way she was talking to her mom, talking about they're not kids. Yes, you are. You're 13 years old. I was so confused. And then Kasim is just the sweetest little baby.
I know.
Him and his ribs. But I was also very upset, because I know that she, like, secretly heard them arguing, and probably over time you're just annoyed, because you're like, well, you're the one that ruined our family. You're the reason why our dad doesn't live here anymore. But even just the anger of, like, losing the aunt, the son, and then I was like, well, was it never explained to them how, like, why they don't have, like, a brother that's in the home, like, you know? So I don't know, it was really frustrating. I understand her frustration, but I also was like, come on. Yeah. Because this is your mother.
It got harsh.
Yeah.
It got pretty harsh.
And I tried to understand at the end as well. It was still really, like, hard to say, like, oh, this is why you're treating her that way. And there were, like, funny moments, or, I mean, it was really hard for Yasmin to see Deja hang out with Hendrix, because she's like, we used to do this. We used to go get our nails done and, like, be great friends. And even she was close to Vashti as well for the time. And I was like, my goodness, that would make me mad too, because it's like, I'm already having a hard time. Yeah. And I'm assuming it was for the whole 2 years that she was that way. So it made me mad. Yeah. So good job, Kennedy Ryan. Making me mad.
So I always focus on these things when I'm reading a book, especially a romance book, because, you know, that's not always my favorite. But Kennedy Ryan, I think, does a great job of articulating other kinds of love throughout the book. So love between parents and children, friends, animals. Were there any other relationships in the book that stood out to you?
Yes. So Hendrix and Deja. Right. Kasim with anyone.
I know. So great.
And then Otis, the dog. Yes. I loved his relationship and bond with Josiah, but also, like, the kids. And also, we didn't actually get to meet Aunt Bird, but I felt like I knew her. I don't even know if there were, like, quotes, but it was just like parts of her within the story. Yeah. The recipe book, that relationship that like connected Josiah and Yasmin back together because she cooked the dressing.
Right.
Do they call it stuffing? I call it dressing.
We're gonna call it dressing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
So we're gonna call it dressing.
Oh, I thought you said we don't. And I said, oh, jump scare. Yeah, and then of course, like, Deja and her dad. I got so mad when she'd be like, Daddy! And then the mom comes around the corner, Yasmin comes, she's like, oh. I'm like, girl, your mom's also in pain. I also liked Kasim's relationship with therapy in general.
Yeah.
Like being scared, but not because, not for like actually talking to a person, but he's like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. And so like Yasmin was like, well, is there something wrong with me? It's like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. But it's like, therapy in general sometimes can just be a hard topic for families to discuss. And so for them to actually talk to their kids, their relationship with their kids, even when Deja was acting wild, they were communicating with them and letting them know like, hey, this is what's going on. Even though part of them, they're like, oh, we're gonna keep this relationship at the end, like spoiler, we're gonna keep this a secret, and it wasn't a secret anymore. Right. But they were transparent, and I like that Deja like was talking to the dad, talking to Josiah, and he said, look, we're adults.
Right.
So
yes,
we're answering your questions because we want to, but know that we don't have to.
Yeah.
Because you're still a child.
Right.
So I just like those moments too.
I agree with every relationship you listed. The one that stood out to me a lot were the three friends, Hendrix, Soledad, Yasmin. There's a scene where she throws her necklace into the fountain, and she realizes, like, I regret that, I want to go back and get it. And she doesn't say anything, she just goes back and climbs in this fountain. Everyone's standing around and they see her and they're like, what is this woman doing in this fountain? And she says she turns around and they're both in the fountain too, and they're like, what are we looking for? And I think the fact that they hopped in, they didn't ask any questions, they were like, I don't know what we're doing, but we're going to support you. It was beautiful. It was really nice.
I love that. All right, thank you so much for your answers, Carrdi. Thank you everyone for listening and joining in. Please be a part of this conversation by continuing on in the comments with your opinions of the book, good, bad, in the middle, however you felt. If you read this book and then you have recommendations, I would like those recommendations, so please share. And to stay up to date, please join our newsletter through our website. You can just add your email address and you'll get up to date on all events, things that are happening, what's next and new. So yeah, thank you.
Our book for October is Ban Yên Moon by Tao Tai, where we follow a multi-generational family of Vietnamese American women as we uncover some of the secrets that they keep and some of the sacrifices that they make for the people that they love.
All right, thank you so much once again for joining us. My name is Anea.
And I'm Carrdi.
All right, we'll see you next time.